Let's talk about data structures because for you guys' final project, you're going to have to implement one data structure to run your program. Okay, so data structures are really just a way for us to help organize our code, but it also gives us a lot of functionality. There are a lot of different ways that we can help organize our code, but there are cases like when we did Madlib, where you guys had 20 variables that were all of the string type. Okay, that, as you guys realized as you were writing it out, that you had to have unique names for every single one, which starts to get kind of tedious. What about in the cases where you don't really need to know the specific name, but you just need to reference it? So that's where data structures can help us. Throughout all of the projects that you guys have had to do, you have come across where you've had to have multiple variables all of the same type that you needed to store and you needed to be able to reference. But it became difficult as you had to remember, say for like example Madlib, that you had to have, if you were doing something like noun 1, noun 2, noun 3, or you had to be, a little adventurous and say action verb to be a little bit more descriptive, action verb 1, action verb 2, however you did it. We're going to end up learning how to do something a little bit different. So with data structures, specifically the one that we're going to be talking about, which is an array, let's look at each of if we wanted to create an array, then we have to pick what type we're going to use. So if, say, I wanted to do a string array, the stuff that I can do with this once I put something into a data structure just makes it so much easier for you to code. So let's say that I wanted to create a data structure for a string. All a data structure is really just a way for you to help organize that data. Okay, so instead of saying, I wanted to have noun 1, noun 2, noun 3, I could say, you know what, I want a list of words. Okay, and I'm doing pseudocode, and we want 20 items in that list, or 20 elements in that list. Okay, now with that in mind, then if I had a list of words, then I could just say, you know what, that first word is going to be jump. That second word is going to be run. That third word is going to be, some type of adjective that you want to use. So slimy. Okay. And if I wanted to change that and say, you know what, I want a different word as my second word, I want flu. This would become a little bit easier because then I can say, you know what, I just want to know what is the word that's stored in that first position. Well, if I say, well, what's that list of words, out of that list of words, what is that first position? So the first position, so if I was just asking, then what we want to happen is we want it basically to just return that word that we put in there. Now, when you're setting this up, a data structure, what it does is when you create it, you have to state the size. Okay, and this is one of the biggest things that people end up having issues with if you don't state the size correctly or you don't actually fill it in with values. One will have basically empty quotes if you didn't put something in there. If we were dealing with numbers, and we had some type of array or a list of numbers, then what I would have if I had my different positions, would not be 0 like you would think if I didn't have anything in there, because that would mean that I actually have a value. It would have the null value. Null means that you actually don't have anything in there. It's non-existent. Okay, so if I created a list or an array, a data structure with 4 items, it has nothing in it. I have to actually say what I want. Now, to be more correct, when you create a data structure in Java, the first position is always 0, and then we count up. So when I am looking at this first position, now I may not know when I'm coding what the last position is. But what I will always have is I will have some type of functions that's going to be called like a dot length, which I could use to reference, because it will tell me how many items are in this list. So here, the length of this list, 1, 2, 3, and 4, would be 4. Okay, so that dot length could tell me, I could use that in a for loop or a enhanced for loop and be able to check that. Say I wanted to check all of the items, but stop at 4 or stop before 4, because this, if I'm counting, I want to stop at 3 as my index, and I don't want to actually go to 4 because I could get an error called an array out of bounds error. So let's look at that kind of encode. All right, so if we were to do, let's say, an int array. Now the easiest way to do it, when we state the type that the array is going to be in, and then we're going to put in 2 square brackets, and then I got to give a name for the array. So I could say my numbers. Okay, now I declared, but there's nothing in it. So if I tried to print this is going to error out. I'm going to have all kinds of issues because I never initialized it. I have to give it a value. I could do it in the same line. I could say equals new int array, square brackets, but with arrays, because we have so much functionality, we have to actually state the size. So we have to say how many elements are going to be in that array. Okay, so if I said 5, then this, my numbers, is going to have 5 spots to store int numbers. I can't put doubles in there. I can't put strings in there. I can only put ints in there. Okay, now if I tried to print any of this, so let's do a for loop to show how we can cycle through, so you guys can see an error. So I need an index number to start, and I want to start at the first position, so I'm going to use int I equals 0, and I want to go to I is less than, we want to use the length, so my numbers. And if I use dot, this right here, just because it's an array, is going to have this length. This length allows me to be able to determine when I want it to stop. So if this is 5, then my length is 5. That means that I want to look at 0 for the index, 1, 2, 3, and 4. If you count those up, that's 5 elements. That's what I want to return. So I'm stopping it before I get there. If I have it where it's equals, this will error out because I will get an array out of bounds exception. Okay, so let's leave it like this because I want to keep you to one error at a time. So I'm having it increase by 1 each time, and let's say all I want to do is print out what it is. Now if I want to reference anything in the array, like what I said, I have to state what number I want it to return. But since I have it inside this for loop, then I can have it return the I value. So every time it goes through the loop, I will be 0. It's going to return whatever value is stored in I at position 0, and then it will increment up because it's finished that first loop. Then it will increment up to 1, so it's going to return the my numbers at position 1. So if I run this, we should see the first issue that I was talking about. Oops, that's not it. Come on. Okay. So we have, for those 5 elements, it has 0. Technically, it's a null value, though. So we have to be mindful of what we see. Okay? So if I want to put in values, though, I can say, you know what? I want my numbers at position 2 to be 3. My numbers at, let's say, the very last position. So I don't even need to know the length of it doing it this way. I could say my numbers dot length, because we know that that would return the total elements. And if I want to return the very last one, it'd be length minus 1. And I could give that a value of, let's say, 100. Now, if I ran this again, the second position right here was reassigned as 3. So if we count positions, we have 0 position, we have first position, we have second position. And this one right here is the very last position, which I assigned as 100. Now, if I tried to do anything like, let's say I wanted to put 100, I'm going to get an error. And if I look over, it says incompatible types. It requires an int, but it found a string. That's because the my numbers was created as an int array. Okay. You can find more information about this, and I'm going to do some other videos showing different ways that we can use arrays and how we can use some of the static methods. But if you went to tutorials point, it gives a really good summary. Just scroll down to the arrays section, and it talks about how you can set up an array and then how you can use it. Okay, it always starts at 0, and the very last element is always going to be the length minus 1. Okay, so we're going to start doing some cool stuff, but to use arrays as they're best intended, a for or for each loop, an enhanced for loop are the best ways that we can use to access the information. So I would suggest that you guys go to tutorials point to get a little bit more up to date, and I'm going to post on different videos on how to use arrays to do different things so you guys can feel prepared for doing your final. All right? Good luck. Have fun.